Welcome back to the Commanders Declassified podcast. I'm your host tonight, Brian. LE is at a softball tournament, so we'll see him hopefully tomorrow night when we do the deep dive. But Eric, Mike, how are you guys?
It's popping,
Oh,
man.
I only play hardball.
Exactly. Well, we've got a special guest tonight. We've got Larry Dyer of Bears Talk Underground podcast. He does a awesome Chicago Bears podcast. Larry, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'd be a lot better if we were 1-3 instead of 0-4. But hey, the season ended today. We got the first two picks in the draft, so there's
I
always
saw
a
that.
silver lining to it all, right?
I saw that. I was like, that's perfect. Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr. You're set for the next 10 years.
One would hope. They are coming to Chicago where we ruin quarterbacks and receivers almost simultaneously. But hey, we can start from scratch with somebody else, I guess.
That's absolutely. And for everyone listening who doesn't know, Larry, I've been on your show a couple of times talking about the Commanders Bears matchups on Thursday nights, and I listened to your show. You said you've been doing this show for how long? It's a long time. How long have you been doing your show?
Well, it was first called the Chicago Bears Review, and it's been since 2007 that I've been doing the podcast. So this is season number 17.
Holy
that
crap.
I'm doing the now called Bears Talk Underground.
All right. Well,
That's impressive.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah,
we're
when my very first podcast was called the Sports Talk Underground, and we'd started doing that in 2004 when the word podcast didn't exist. There was no such thing. We were still calling radio shows back in 2004.
Oh wow. Well, that's awesome. Well, we've got another Thursday night matchup between the Commanders and Bears. Last year was it was an ugly game, 12-7. Like just kind of generally, what's I know you just said it 0-4, so things are a little rocky, but what's kind of the general feel around the team so far this year with the Bears?
It's all over the board, man. It's all over the board from fire everybody to everybody calm down. It's still early and this wasn't going to be a playoff team anyway, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, it really depends on who you're talking to when you're trying to get a pulse of the fan base. I tend to sit somewhere in the middle where I'm not panicking, but I'm also not blowing a gasket either. Like I said, I thought the Bears floor to ceiling would be anywhere from 6 wins to 11. Right now, 6 wins is looking generous, but I've always kind of landed at the Bears probably being at best like a 9-8 team this year, which would be significant progress from the 3-14 that we were a year ago. So it's like, as a Bears fan, yes, we're all impatient with how many restarts we've had, especially since we fired Lovie Smith back after the 2012 season, where this is now our 4th coach, our 3rd general manager. So we seem to be starting over every 3 years or so. And we're impatient. We want to see the team win. We want to see them back to the playoffs and back to prominence in the division and everything. And it's for one reason or another, it just won't happen.
Yeah. We are no strangers to turnover and turmoil, though now we seem to have turned a new leaf, and it's just football stuff here related. So hopefully that sticks for us. But I've been a big Justin Fields fan. I knew he started his career at Georgia. I watched him at Ohio State, and I thought, man, he could be something here in the NFL. What's the feeling on him? Are Bears fans still all behind him? Is the team behind him, or is it some of it starting to wear off now? Or
again, it's across the board. It's the rainbow of expressions. Everyone's, warming up the seat for Caleb Williams, or everyone, especially after yesterday, people seem to be jumping back in to the Justin Fields bandwagon because we finally gave him some time to throw the ball as opposed to having to run for his life or being constantly under pressure. And over 60% of his dropbacks in the first 3 games of the season. So he was getting beat up and having to throw off his back foot and, that kind of thing. And yesterday he had time. He could read the field, and he hooked up with everybody. Darnell Mooney, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, 7-8 catches apiece for all of them. DJ Moore, 130 yards and a touchdown. Cole Kmet, 2 touchdowns. 75 yards on 8 catches. You know, they were getting it done on offense. And what I was hoping, especially playing against the defense that gave up 70 the week before, was that at the very least we could come away being able to put it on tape what it's supposed to look like, because we hadn't seen that yet against Green Bay, Tampa Bay, or especially last week against the Chiefs. Everything was in shambles. You ever see the movie Necessary Roughness?
Oh yeah.
Well, they're playing their first game and they keep calling the same play over and over again, and they're in the huddle like, we've already called that play, and then the quarterback's like, we hadn't seen it yet. They haven't seen it yet. So like, we haven't run it right yet. And that's basically what the Bears offense was first 3 weeks. It's like, you don't know what it's supposed to look like because they haven't done it yet. And yesterday was the first chance that we got to see what it looks like when Fields has time, when the receivers are getting open, because it was a calamity of errors against Kansas City. There was always at least one thing that went wrong on every single play that we just couldn't get anything done against them last week.
Now, hopefully it's only a matter of time until you sign Kathy Ireland to kick for you. And then then you go on a run, right? That's how it works.
I don't know if she has the leg 30 years later, but I wouldn't mind seeing that. That'd be fun to watch.
Don't put it past her. Yeah, don't put it past her. So, my question, I was kind of going around Justin Fields as well, because you had mentioned earlier about, you have the first 2 picks in the draft. And, Caleb Williams kind of just announced today what teams he would play for if he came out, allegedly. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but he said, it was like the Rams, the Cowboys, the Giants, and not the Bears, not the Commanders. Let's put it that way. I guess with the kind of the turnaround that Fields had, and admittedly, I've been a Fields fan too, like Brian. But I turned on him pretty quickly this year when I saw those first 2 games. I was like, because I've always been like, all the guy needs is some talent around him, and he's got talent around him now. Having not really watched much of the games, though, I don't know how bad the offensive line play was. So I haven't really familiarized myself with the team that much yet. I was hoping to do that today, actually. But I guess with is quarterback is quarterback a slam dunk if you end up with the number 1 pick next year, or is it just like a fire everybody? And what do you think what's the feeling out there in Chicago for that?
Well, the big reason as to why I can't answer that question completely is, like, number one, you just go on the history, and the history would tell you no. But because Eberflus is gone, I think that's a foregone conclusion, especially if we lose to you guys Thursday. I feel there's a very high probability he may not be our coach on Friday.
Oh, wow.
I mean, traditionally, that's not what the Bears do. They, for some reason, like to ride out the storm for the rest of the season. But we've got a new president and CEO in charge, and apparently the buck stops with him as far as football operations are concerned. And, he also did not hire this coach or this general manager, so he's not beholden to any of them. He might just be like, you know what? This season is tanked. We're 0-5. You guys are done, or at least the head coach is done. We'll throw somebody in there for the last 10, 11 games, whatever it is, and then we'll figure it out in 2024 with a brand new head coach and possibly even a brand new general manager. So without knowing who those guys are, I can't say with a probability what success would befall on Caleb Williams, or I don't blame him for not putting Chicago on the list right now without knowing who his head coach would be. Because coming into this situation, I wouldn't want to either if I was him.
Yeah, it just sounds like you're a Commanders fan, honestly. Everything you're saying, it's like us this year. It's the same thing, because we're fairly certain that Ron Rivera is a short timer, and everything's going to look different next year as well. And Sam Howell's playing well here, so it's good to commiserate, I guess, with another fan base.
Well, that's what Brian and I were talking about this morning. Was that I was telling him when I was doing because I do an NFL show as well, and when I was previewing the Commanders and the Cardinals, I was saying that with new ownership in place, and there's brand new hope again. In Washington, literally everyone from the GM all the way down is playing for their job this year. So these guys better show up, especially against this team that's supposed to be tanking this year. So they have the number 1 and number 2 pick in the draft next season in the Cardinals. And going into the fourth quarter, I was like, hey man, you guys want to get fired tomorrow? You're down 16-10 to the Cardinals of all teams going into the fourth quarter in front of a packed house for the first time in how long? It's like, this is not a good show. And then you guys came back and, Sam Howell polished it off to get the win.
To be fair, it's been packed before. It's just been packed with other teams' fans. This is the first time it's been packed with our team's fans. That probably threw the team off a little bit. They didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, we kind of have a gauge on Rivera, Larry, and what his shortcomings are. Why do you feel so strongly that if Washington loses, if Washington beats Chicago on Friday, that Eberflus is out of there?
Because we're 0-5, which would mean that we're on a current 15-game losing streak in the regular season. Because we last won week 7 on Monday night against the Patriots last year, where the Bears were coming off the mini bye after that disastrous game against you guys on Thursday Night Football. We had a 10-day break. We come out on Monday night, and it's a brand new offense. Justin Fields is rolling out. He's running all over. We put 33 up on the Patriots, only allowed 14. That was the last game we won because we lost 10 straight after that, finishing. We were 3-4. We finished 3-14. And all the hope and hype, and we had draft picks. We had $100 million in cap space. We went out and improved the team across the board. And on paper, at least, we are far more talented than we were a year ago, and yet we're playing as bad, if not worse, than we did a year ago. And that all comes down to coaching. You know, when you have improved talent and everybody agrees that you're better, that, you know, you have more talent than you did a year ago. People are expecting big things from you, and you look worse than you did last year when you were the inferior, scrappy team that wouldn't go away till the fourth quarter. Now we're out of the game in the first quarter. We just look like we're not showing up at all, and we've got all this talent that we signed and drafted and all that kind of stuff. So that would be an Eberflus failure. It's like last year it was okay. The cupboard was bare. Ryan Pace left us with 5 draft picks and maybe about 20 million in cap space. And, you know, Ryan Poles had to put lipstick on a pig just to put a field on the team last year. And so it's like from the beginning of 2022, everyone was looking forward to 2023 because we knew we weren't going to be able to put much out there. We hoped and prayed we see an improvement from Justin Fields, and he gave us that 1,100 yards rushing, at times the most exciting player in the league last year. And so it was like, great, we have our quarterback. Now let's go out and improve the team. We got DJ Moore. We signed Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, Robert Tonyan away from the Packers. We got, we drafted Darnell Wright in the first round. We got Nate Davis from the Titans. It's like we're locked and loaded. We're ready to go. We're ready to make some progress. And here we are, 0-4, looking at 0-5 in the face right now. Because with your defensive line and the way our offensive line has played, you guys are going to beat us up on Thursday.
Well, we've given up 30 points 3 weeks in a row, including the team you guys just played last week. So
yeah,
maybe pump the brakes on the defense talk. Now, historically, Del Rio's defenses have improved like as the season has progressed. So, this is hopefully the step in the right direction. But I don't think anybody else besides you on this podcast is as certain as you are about how bad your offense is going to do against our defense.
Well, I'm hoping, like I said, that we may have turned a corner yesterday. Like I said, being able to put on tape what it's supposed to look like against the Broncos will show us, like, this is what it looks like when we execute. And, when we execute, good things happen. So let's stop going out there and playing street ball and actually play Bears football and see what happens, even when we're not playing a cupcake defense like the Broncos.
With a couple of the players on the Bears defense I followed just because I'm into the draft. I love the draft. I watch a lot of college football. There's a couple of guys of interest to me. Jack Sanborn, linebacker, I think Wisconsin.
Yes.
Just one of those big, tough middle linebacker type dudes. Like how is he? Has he played well? Like he's somebody I wanted for us because Rivera always talks about, hey, we want our linebackers to play downhill. And then they go and get a guy who has no instincts and who takes 3 years to develop, like Jamin Davis. And then they're constantly upset with him. And Sanborn was like one of those dudes, like, tough, snot coming out his nose. Like, I'm just going to knock you out type. Like, how's he been?
He's been a pleasant surprise. And I thought for sure with he was an undrafted free agent for us as a rookie last year. So we signed him up. And immediately in the first preseason game against Kansas City, he picks off a pass. He's everywhere on defense and special teams. I mean, the guy was a lightning rod. And I was watching that game with my dad, and we both looked at each other as like, that's the first guy they'll cut. right there, because the Bears have this reputation for always breaking the fan base's heart by cutting that preseason darling.
Yeah.
You know, one year it was a wide receiver, a kid that we drafted, Daniel Braverman from Western Michigan. He was a stud, and later because he's 7th round pick, so he's playing late in the game and all that kind of stuff. And makes the final cuts, doesn't make the team, didn't get signed to the practice squad, never heard from him again, kind of thing. But it's always somebody in the preseason where it's like, oh, that guy's playing like a machine against the second and third teamers, but that'll be the first guy that gets cut when the cuts come around. And somehow he survived and was a starter for us last year, especially after we traded Roquan to the Ravens. He was our middle linebacker last year, and not seeing as much from him because he's been moved to the strong side because TJ's our weak side and Tremaine Edmonds is now our middle linebacker. But he's still starting for us. He's still playing for us, and he's still doing things.
Oh, nice.
In DC, we call that the Lake Sea Strunk Award.
Yeah,
the preseason darling who does nothing, who you never hear from again.
Right.
Yeah. I guess my question, not a preseason darling. This is somebody that the Bears gave up draft picks for. What is happening with Chase Claypool? Like, what's the deal there?
I think our divorce is pending with Chase Claypool. When I talked to Brian this morning, I was under the impression that the Bears gave Chase Claypool the choice not to attend yesterday's game when they told him that he was going to be inactive. Turns out that was not true. The Bears told him to stay away, and they told him to stay away this week. So he's not going to be in the building all week long. So like I believe our divorce is pending from Chase Claypool, and that will go down as the worst thing that Ryan Poles did. And the thing that people like to give a lot of guff to Poles about is that he gave up what turned out to be the 32nd overall pick, which was the first pick in the second round for Chase Claypool. Well, at the time when the trade was made, we were 3-4. It was a middle second round pick. It was in the middle of the second round. Then we lose 10 straight and it becomes the top pick in the second round. It's like, Ryan Poles saw a 3-4 team. We needed a little juice in the wide receiver area because Equinemius St. Brown and Byron Pringle weren't getting it done outside of Darnell Mooney for Fields. So we brought somebody in, a talented guy that just needed a fresh start because things weren't going so well in Pittsburgh. So we bring him in. He struggles all year to get the system down and was real excited going through the offseason. He's through the whole program. Everything's happy. He's happy with his role because he was saying it was going to put him more in a position that he was in his first year when he scored like 11 touchdowns for the Steelers. Like that's what Getsy was going to do with him. And then the season starts and he was easily the worst player on the field against the Packers, almost to the point where he was inactive for week 2 against Tampa Bay. They bring him in. He plays a lot better, scores a touchdown against the Bucs, and then goes right back to it last week with Kansas City. And then in a week where you just took the beating of your life from the defending world champions, you're just embarrassed on the field. It was a keep your head down and go to work kind of day. And this guy wants to play stupid games. So he won stupid prizes when he goes out and he says, no, I'm not being used well on Friday. And it's like,
oh, man.
Yeah, sometimes when things aren't working out for a guy in one place, it's kind of the guy's fault.
Yeah.
So
it's not always a bad situation. Sometimes it's just.
But it was like, Chase, is anybody being used correctly before the game on Sunday? Is anybody on offense being used the way they're supposed to be right now? It's like, get in line, bro. Seriously, what's the matter with you?
I'm just thinking, like, what would Sam Laporta look like in a Bears jersey right now?
Yeah,
I'm just looking at who was there at the top of the second round into the first round, and Steve Avila, who we loved here. We were big stands for him. There's a lot of good talent there. Don't worry, we wasted our second round pick too, so don't feel too bad.
Yeah,
our second round picks. We have a history of second round picks who just do absolutely nothing. You go from Ryan Anderson to Fidarian Mathis, a defensive tackle who we picked, even though we already have 2 stud defensive tackles. We take him in the second round, and he's basically been injured the whole time. So
the whole time.
Yeah. The long history of bad second round picks.
Well, the thing is, we still got a second round pick for Roquan Smith, but it was the Bears picking at 10, and then we didn't pick again until 61. Ouch. And then we had to trade up a few spots to get Tyreek Stevenson, the corner out of Miami, who's been amazing for us. He's been outstanding for us. But, to have to go on paper, we had to wait 51 spots to go from 10 to 61 to pick again. That's where the big gap was. And that's why the Bears weren't able to draft an edge rusher for that, because by the time the Bears were picking again, even by trading up to 56, everybody that you would have wanted is already gone, because Van Ness and Tyreek Wilson and all those guys were off the board by the time we were picking again in the second round.
So I want to jump back to offense, and particularly the offensive line, Larry. So I was listening to your show from yesterday after the Broncos game, and you kept mentioning how the Broncos had a free rusher all game.
Ugh.
Was that scheme? Was it the offensive line skill set? What was going on?
Yes, because it started out as scheme, and then became an issue with the offensive line, because they showed us that look several times throughout the game. Like, there was a play on the first drive of the game that we'll never ever know what it was supposed to be, because they had guys flying in untouched, and the play never got to develop. Like, as soon as we snapped the ball, there are literally 3 guys in the backfield, and it was almost to the point where they disrupted the handoff, and probably could have one of those things where Justin Fields hands it off to Frank Clark, who runs it in for a touchdown kind of thing, in the wrong direction kind of thing. I mean, Frank Clark didn't play yesterday, but it's the first person I could think of. But, but that's how bad that play was. And then it happened again later in the first half. And then it happened a third time. And we kept getting away with it, whether Justin was able to shake him or he ran past him or whatever it was. And then finally, on that fumble, he goes for the play fake. And I think it was something where Lovie Smith cracked the code on that, because last year when we played the Texans, they did that to us all day long. Every time we went with the play fake, the other 10 guys worried about the running back if he was the one that came away with the ball. The free rusher always kept coming for Justin. Didn't slow down, didn't fall for the ball fake, nothing. Always came right for the quarterback. And that's what the Broncos did yesterday, and we finally got burned for it in the fourth quarter. Justin turns around. The guy is already in his face. He's in desperation mode, tries to jump up and throw it over his head. Ball gets knocked out of his hands. His former Ohio State teammate, Cooper, scoops it up, runs it in. Now we got a tie ball game where with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, it was 28-7. Wow. So, like, that's how that went. It's like all day they've been doing this, and they finally got – it's like, how many more times did they need to do it? And apparently it was number 4, number 5, whatever it was. They did it over and over again. We did nothing to counteract it, and they finally smoked us for it.
It's crazy because during our post game yesterday, Brian mentioned the Bears lost, and I couldn't believe it, because the last time I checked, it was halftime 28-7, and I'm like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
And then I gave Phil's props, and was like, well, he had a good game. He's going to enter the game on a hot streak. Well, he threw the interception at the end of the game, so I'm like, what in the world happened?
It all came falling apart, man. Because and to comment on that, in the moment, I can't believe it either. In the context of the first 3 games of the season, I can absolutely believe that happened.
Yeah.
Because that's what we did. We played the fourth quarter like we played the first 3 games of the season. There was always something that held us up. There was always a wrong decision that was made. Like in the first drive of the game, Eberflus didn't want to go for it on 4th down. He elected to punt. But here it is. We're down at their 17-yard line, and we kick a field goal and take the lead, give the ball back to them, see what happens kind of thing. But shows that he's got no faith in the defense that he's calling by going for it on 4th down. We get stuffed by not putting the ball in Justin Fields' hands, who was easily the best player we got, especially on offense. I think DJ Moore's challenging him for that title right now. But we go for it on 4th down. We don't get an inch. We give the ball back to Denver. They go and kick the field goal, and then Justin throws the interception on the last drive, which was more of a miscommunication between him and Cole Kmet, because I think he thought Cole was going to keep coming across the middle of the field, and he sat on the route and ends up looking like he just threw it straight to the defender, because Cole is not where he thought he was going to be. So, yeah, he threw the pick, but it was more than just a bad throw. And I'm not trying to be an apologist, but when you look at the tape, that's what happened. He was expecting Kmet to keep going across the middle of the field. Komet sat on the route, so it looks like he just threw it straight to the defender.
So I'm
Yeah,
curious
we've
how
had
the
those
flow.
games before.
How did the flow of the game go yesterday? Just looking through the play-by-play in the box score, it kind of looks like the second quarter, your offense just woke up and exploded. Was it kind of in the second half, maybe the Bears figured it out a little bit and were stopping it more? Did things kind of stall there, or what happened, past that? Because I know it was 21 in the third quarter, and I think a touchdown or 21 in the second, and then a touchdown in the third. Did everything just stall out at that point, or was it back and forth, or how did that go? I haven't had a chance to watch the game yet.
It would appear, and this is another to answer your question from earlier, Mike. Why would Eberflus get fired? Because he doesn't make halftime adjustments. Because we just kept going out and doing the same thing that we were doing in the first half, which, okay, fine. But when you see that all of a sudden Denver is catching on, or that Denver has figured out what we're doing on defense, because they had the opening drive touchdown, and then we shut them down the rest of the first half. And then on offense, it was, like I said, what it was supposed to. This is what we were expecting to see. Not so much that we score on every drive, but at least seeing competent offensive play now that we've got this upgrade in talent across the board. And, Justin had time. We were running the ball well, not as well as we would have liked, and we also weren't running as much as I would have liked to see. But the passing game was working. Justin, up until the final throw of the first half, was perfect. He was 16 of 16 and then throws the Hail Mary at the end of the first half. So he was 16 for 17, 231 and 3 touchdowns in the first half. And then we come out essentially a 3-and-out on offense for the Broncos and put a 15-play, 9.5-minute drive together where Fields eludes a free rusher on the goal line, dances around and finds Khalil Herbert in the end zone for a touchdown to go up 28-7. And then it all came falling apart after that. So it was just we went 3-and-out on the next drive, and then Denver kept scoring as we like their next 3 drives they put 3 touchdowns on the board. So that was the most frustrating thing was we don't make the second half adjustments, so we don't see what they're doing and then make in-game adjustments. And Broncos were like, okay, well, they're not stopping it, so we'll just keep doing this. And we made Russell Wilson look like a Super Bowl champ again after he'd been a bum for the first month of the season. So
he looked like a Super Bowl champ in the first half against us. Don't worry.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah, I know. I was watching the highlights of that game.
It sounds like Eberflus or Getsy are extremely similar to Scott Turner, where they're going to run their game plan.
It's cold, Brian. It's mean. It's piling on.
Hey, Scott Turner never made any type of adjustment. First half, second half, first quarter, fourth quarter, did not matter. It was the same game plan, the same plays over and over again, regardless how many times it failed. So we've seen that like literally for 3 years here, and we just were able to get rid of it. So we completely sympathize with having that there. But what are you expecting from the Bears? It's a short week. Not a whole lot of time to game plan. I imagine they're probably going to give Fields some more freedom to, like, it seemed like in the first couple of games they want to just make him a robot drop back passer, and it's like, why? Like, he's an exciting athlete. Let him be an athlete. Like, let him run.
Yeah, we still didn't see much of that yesterday, but thankfully the offensive line was able to hold up the pass rush, so Fields could actually be a pocket passer yesterday. He only ran when he absolutely needed to. We tried to do like 2 quarterback runs in the first quarter, and both of them got stuffed, so they tore that page out of the playbook and threw it away because we never saw it again for the rest of the game. And I'm hoping we mix that up, because despite our 3-14 record, we had the best rush offense in the league last year, mainly because of Justin Fields. But Khalil Herbert was a beast. We had David Montgomery as well, all running the football well. I mean, we couldn't protect Justin Fields to save his life last year in the passing game. We were the worst passing game in the league by far, 130 yards a game. It was awful. But running the football is where teams were afraid of us last year, whether it was Fields or Herbert or Montgomery. We were balling out on the ground, and the offensive line, as bad as it could be at times, they were getting it done in the run game. So I would like to see more of the run game, and I think we might see more of it because we're supposed to get Tevin Jenkins back. So he's done with his 4-game IR stint, and If he doesn't play on Thursday, then I think we'll definitely see him in 10 days when we play the Vikings. But we could definitely use the boost up front with Jenkins, because Jenkins is that guy, like you were describing, Sanborn, snot bubbles in his nose and hates everybody not wearing a Bear uniform kind of guy. We could use that kind of juice up front right now.
So who on the Commanders scares you as a Bears fan, and who on the Bears should scare us as Commanders fans?
The guys that scare me are Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, because that's where we're most vulnerable. Our tackles hold up pretty well, but I would be worried about Chase Young and Larry Borum right now, our left tackle, who's in for Braxton Jones, who's on IR and might be done for the year with a neck injury. So we don't know if we're getting him back right now. But, you know, Borum has experience, but he's our swing tackle for a reason, kind of thing. And so right now would be the interior guys, because that's the shortest route to Fields, and especially since those guys were a big reason why we had so much trouble with you guys last year. Allen and Daron Payne just beat up that middle of the offensive line, got to Fields over and over again, to the point where there was more than one occasions Fields needed a minute before he got up off the ground last year. So if I'm afraid of anybody, I'm afraid of those guys. And then on offense for you, McLaren is definitely the guy that I'm most worried about. We're banged up in the secondary, and we can't put a pass rush together to save our lives. So Howell will have all day to wait for Terry McLaren to get open somewhere. And then as far as who should you be afraid of from us?
Yeah.
DJ Moore, because
he's had games against us in the past.
Yeah, he's thriving despite it all right now. I mean, 8 catches for 131 and a touchdown yesterday. Cole Kmet, if we actually get him involved, 8 catches, 75 yards, 2 touchdowns yesterday. Not so much Khalil Herbert, because like I said, we're still struggling to run the ball. And I'm hoping we get Jenkins back. I think we'll see an improvement in the run game. Tevin comes back on Thursday, but we haven't heard anything about that yet. But those are the guys that you know, you guys are probably already focusing on Herbert and DJ Moore and Kmet. So outside, of course, of Justin Fields, but we don't use them like we did last year. So who knows?
Yeah, one last question for me is how angry and surprised were you that Daron Payne did not end up in a Bears uniform? Because I was shocked. If you had asked me this time last year, at any point prior to March, where's Daron Payne going to be next year? I would have said Chicago. I thought you guys would have been all in on that dude. I was blown away that we re-signed him.
Yeah, I was disappointed when I heard that they franchised him, which meant it's like, all right, well, he's off the board. That sucks. And because at the time, I really wanted the Jalen Carter talk to go away, because like if we get Daron Payne, we're not drafting Jalen Carter. That's off the table. You know, we get a veteran and bring him in there, even though he'd be a lot more expensive than the Jalen Carter would be. It would have been a lot easier choice for me to make than signing somebody who was an apparent head case in Georgia. Talented as he is, because he's balling out in Philly for sure. But I don't regret not taking him, because as I was telling Brian this morning, we don't have the makeup to take care of him. We don't have that mixture of veterans and young guys. We also don't have 5 of his teammates on the roster from Georgia as well. So he'd be coming into, you know, like he doesn't know anybody, and we haven't established that veteran presence yet. That's what we're working on. And so, you know, I was disappointed that Payne was off the board, and disappointed when you guys actually did sign him to that long-term deal, holding out hope that maybe it'd be a 1-year franchise thing and we could scoop him up next year kind of thing. But you signed him to that 4-year deal. I don't know where the money's coming from, because everybody on your defensive line is going to be making $20 million a season next year.
Yeah.
But
basically,
you know,
I wanted to leave after the game last year in Chicago. I wanted to leave Daron Payne there, and we take Roquan Smith. Like, yeah, you guys were already looking to move him. I was like, you know, that would have been perfect. Like, just we'll take him back on the plane. You guys have Daron. It'll all work out. But
I'd have made that trade all day long right there.
Our 2 former linebacker coaches are just dead set against bringing in linebackers.
It's strange, isn't it?
It really is.
Well, and just like, you know, we brought in a hot defensive coordinator to be our head coach, and we have one of the worst defenses in the NFL for 2 years running now. So, I don't know how it is that always works, that the unit that made the guy a head coach is always the one that suffers when he's running the whole show.
Yeah, and if you look at our roster, it's full of defensive tackles and safeties. Like we don't even bother trying to put resources into linebacker. It's very, very strange, and the coaches don't even want to talk about it. They're just like, oh, they're doing a great job, and we constantly see them out of position. So you'll see that come Thursday night. You guys will probably, our defense, our linebackers constantly are getting matched up on other teams' number 1 wide receivers, number 2 wide receivers.
Oh,
I don't know. But Jamin Davis will be matched up on a wide receiver. Cody Barton will be matched up on a wide receiver, and it's always a huge game.
We had Chase Young on AJ Brown at one point last week. That's a true story.
Yeah,
is that right?
That is a thing that happened. Yeah.
It was back-to-back plays. They dropped Chase Young into coverage. That's what we're doing. So, there's certainly opportunities for the Bears to make some plays. And if they decide to run Justin Fields, we probably are going to be in trouble because we've struggled with quarterbacks who can run, and Justin Fields can really run. Like he's excellent at that. But Mike, you got any other questions before we wrap up?
Nah, man, I'm just thankful for Larry for coming on. I listened to your show earlier with some good stuff, man. Definitely going to check it out.
Well, I apologize for the language. I don't always do what explicit episodes, but sometimes when those games turn out that way, it's just you wouldn't be able to understand the show behind all the bleeps if I bleeped it all out. It was mother and beep and bit and son of a all over again. Especially after that fourth quarter collapse because of the short window. I did that show maybe an hour after the game ended, so I was still hot when I went back in. It's like generally the show does, like if you listen to Wednesday's show when the interview with me and Brian comes out, you're not going to hear all that nonsense. I'm going to be like mother and all. It's not going to be like that. I'm trying to be professional here, and I'm just taking advantage of the fact that there's no FCC when it comes to podcasts, and really just let it all hang out like I did all 4 games so far this year. So yeah, it's been a mess.
I was listening. I was like, this feeling feels familiar to me. Feels like home a little bit.
Know. We understand. We absolutely do.
Well, I believe I endeared myself to Brian. We were talking off mic before we talked for the first time when I told him that I thought the 91 championship team for the Redskins probably one of the most underrated teams of all time as far as like where they belong in the all-time rankings, because they were just one of the best teams I've ever seen, and they kind of get lost in history because that was the last title before the Cowboys won 3 out of 4. So it always kind of jumps to the Cowboys dominating the 90s with those 3 titles. I was like, but don't forget about the Redskins. Those guys were insane to play against in 91.
It's actually funny you mentioned that because I was looking at the game that we played yesterday and I was trying to, it was bugging me like what that reminded me of. The game that we played against Philly yesterday reminded me of the 91 Redskins team week 2 against that Cowboys team, because you had that juggernaut Redskins team that was just a dominant football team that entire year. And they had been good for a long time and everybody was picking them to beat the Super Bowl. And then you had this up and coming, but not quite ready for primetime Cowboys team that took it to them and gave them everything they had in week 2. And it really, that's what our performance against Philly looked like yesterday. It reminded me of that Cowboys team. And I'm putting a lot on this team because, again, it's probably going to look completely different next year. But just the fact that there's just a really talented team that's just not quite there yet, that just gave it everything they had and came up just a little tiny bit short against a team that's going to be a juggernaut all season. So that's what I'm hoping for. I appreciate you saying that because I would agree with you that the 91 Redskins team, I'm the only one on our podcast that really remembers that team because I'm old, probably like you are. So
I'm 45, so I remember them well. That was my
47. I'm right there.
That was
I remember that 85 Bears team too, which oh my gosh, that Buddy Ryan, that game that you guys put it on.
Talk about a team that ruined football for me forever.
Right.
I was 7 years old in 1985, and the 85 team was the first one that I followed from start to finish.
Oh,
and because I was 7 years old, my bedtime was before Monday Night Football started. So in 85, I didn't see the Bears lose a game all year because the one game they did lose was Monday Night Football, and I had to go to bed. So I didn't get to watch them lose. I was stunned the next morning when I woke up and my dad told me that that can happen? They can lose? No way, because every single game I watched, they won, including the Super Bowl. And then they backed it up in 86 by going 14-2. So in 32 games of me watching the Bears play, they won 29 of them. It's like, talk about ruining your expectations for the rest of your life. Because,
and if Ditka hadn't put in Flutie in the playoffs against us, I think you would have been back in the NFC Championship game too.
Come on, man.
I'm just saying, I agree with you. And look, you and I think should get together and just do a podcast on how much on our man crushes over Wilbur Marshall, because I guarantee you have one.
Cheers to that.
Wilbur's one of my all-time favorite players in Chicago. He nearly murdered that Detroit quarterback that game. It's just, oh my gosh,
they would bury him under the stadium if anything like that happened today.
Wilbur could not play in today's NFL.
No,
he was a killer. Very underrated.
And they always do that quarterback dirty by always showing that play in slow motion.
Oh my gosh!
Then you get to see him get launched about 10 yards backwards and his body thud into the ground. It's like, oh yeah, he's dead.
And
he's dead.
And he has to watch it while he eats his applesauce, because I'm guaranteed he still can't eat solid food after that hit 30 years later. I'm sorry, man. We've lost Brian and Mike.
I've already figured out the new podcast name, NFC Battles of Yesteryear. There you go. We'll have both of you guys
hanging out.
We can do what was it, 90? I think 1990, Week 10, 49ers, Giants, Monday Night Football. Mark Bavaro knocking about 12 guys off of him when he catches that pass across the middle, literally ran everybody over.
12 game.
Yeah. It's like he's a beast.
That was nuts. Yeah,
those were the good old days.
I miss
Larry, thank you for coming on. This is awesome. Appreciate you having me on your show.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Where can everybody find you, listen to you, follow you?
Well, I'm at BTU_Larry on Twitter and or X or whatever the hell they're calling it these days, and Instagram. And I got a Facebook group, so you search Bears Talk Underground on Facebook, you get in on that. I also have a podcast called The Fourth Phase. That's my NFL show, comes out twice a week, and obviously the Bears Talk Underground, since I've been doing since 2007. You can iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast, you can find me screaming into the mic, especially in my listeners like the review episodes because I'm volatile and I'm upset and I'm trying to hold back from the language, and sometimes I just can't. So it's like, even though we lost the game, everybody's excited because Larry's going to pop a gasket on this episode and he's going to really let him have it. So can't wait to hear that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And then we'll catch up with you after Thursday night's game, man. Thank you.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Take care. Appreciate it.
Take care.